Chapter 2, going through these, knowing that people are in different places as far as the exercise they're working on. I'm going to go ahead with putting these into the drawings and doing a little bit of detailing. Again, it's not a requirement that you go ahead with the detailing. Chapter 4 is our create the drawing, put dimensions on it assignment. It's good practice to understand the process. It's part of the workflow. Parts, assembly, drawings, not necessarily in that order, but usually you need a part, usually need assembly to create a drawing. So it's going to be part of our process. The other thing, just kind of cruising through the parts, is as you've done most of these. If I do it slightly different technique. Just kind of how would you build that into your workflow? How do you would you go with the putting that into your toolbox? So when I look at this project 2.1, I just see the rectangle and a couple of shapes knocked out of it. This lends itself to contours and regions pretty straightforward, pretty easy. So I'm going to go ahead with that that strategy. And it was an inch, so I'm in my template. One of the advantages, again, of the template is that I get the, I've set my origin to be on, so it's showing up in blue. I have that reference. That is the quickest way to tell that I'm not in a sketch, that it's waiting for me to do something. Right click on the front plane, go into the sketch, and first part is the rectangle. And then I'll just be different. I'm going to hit L on the keyboard and sketch the other geometries. So by this point you should be getting kind of used to the free form. Just throw a sketch up there, get some line geometry going, and as you put in the dimensions, let the sketch come back to you. All right, so I'm pretty close on my numbers. I'm really not going to chase them that closely when I'm doing the sketching, because the dimensions will take care of that for me. Oh, and I do see that I need to go back into my template, and the fun pick that I did for the font is finally getting to me. So dimension. Selected dimension is driven. So let's go ahead and undo that. See what I missed here. 1 inch. Back into the smart dimension. Alright, so since that didn't come up with a modify box, and went for me, because I turned off the or selected the do not show, what I'm getting is this gray extension line. What you would see is the pop-up box that says, do you want to make this dimension driven or leave it driving? So as soon as I see something like that, I want to check. Probably the most likely candidate is that I got a coincident to this point. So if I highlight and I see anything else pop up that isn't directly related to that line or something that I intended to do, I need to make that relation go away. So then what do I do with this dimension? Right now it's still going to be driven. I can delete it, but under other there is a checkbox to return it to driving status. All right, so in my what if scenarios, I can switch between driven and driving on the dimensions to kind of give me a tool to not necessarily have to pick one or the other. Have one for reference, have one that is actually driving the geometry. And then let's see the depth, 1.5. All right. So at this point, I would consider it purely optional to do the trim. If I don't have to, we'll go ahead and into the Extrude Boss base, pick the region, go ahead and drag out a little bit or set the direction depending on what we're doing. Again, the scale, as you get closer to the scale, will give you the numbers, but I'm not chasing that scale to 3 decimal places. At best, the 2 decimal places, and then it did snap to 1 inch, so we'll take the 1 inch. And then we'll go ahead and save. And I'll figure out where I saved. Alright, so at this point I've got a folder full of Chapter 1. This would be a good time to go ahead and make a folder for Chapter 2. And I'll start saving to it. I'll go back into File Explorer, gather up all my Chapter 1, and put it into that folder. And so 2-1. Alright, taking this over into a drawing, if you want to go just single drawing at a time, make drawing from part. So this is under the File pull down. Make drawing from part is a quick way. And let's see, I have, well, let's stay with the default drawing template until we create one. Alright, so again, if you have only show standard formats, you're only going to see the standard ISO. Uncheck, and we'll pick for the landscape, a landscape. Alright, so this will be kind of the accepted standard. To me, this is still taking up maybe a quarter of my sheet, and I don't really need all this information. So I'm putting eyes on the items that I am going to use and things that I would really like to take away. But as far as creating the drawings, at least initially, we're going to set a front view and then drag the other views into the mix and go ahead and accept. The scale looks pretty good. In this case, I would probably shrink the isometric view just a little bit. And as we scroll down through its property manager, we can see that the scale is set to parent scale. Sheet scale would be pretty much the same, or we can put a custom scale. And if that was already 1/2, then let's see what, well, 1/5, maybe a little small. And if I scroll up, I can go to user defined. User defined, there we go, make sure I click it. And pick any combination, so this time 1/3. Putting dimensions on then is just like what we did in the sketch. So picking objects, and I'm set up still for the ISO. And then typically if you're not going to put dimensions on a view, you don't really need that view. And I guess my preference is still that I will have the hidden lines removed, mainly because if the drawing's not that complicated, I really don't want to see stuff that isn't going to help me. But then the other side of it is if it's really complicated, I don't want things that are going to be distracting. So if we wanted to switch to hidden lines, under the property manager again, display style, hidden lines visible, and because it will carry over into the child views or the other 2 views, then we'll get the hidden lines. So again, it's kind of a preference whether you want to use those or not, in my opinion. So we'll drop that one in, and then that becomes a drawing sheet. Right, so by default it picks up the same name as the file, or in the case of multi-sheet, as the first file that you put into the sheet. All right, jumping over to P-2-2. Kind of a strange shape. Can't really say that I would do the rectangle on this one. I think this is just going to be a bunch of lines, maybe the rectangle in the center to position. And this one is in inches as well. And again, kind of pick a corner. So just to be different, I'm going to start on this corner. All right, so it's kind of perpendicular, really about one of the only perpendicular in the group. So over, down, over, angle. All right, if I'm watching those inferences, I'll pick up a few clues along the way. If not, then I expect that I will get a few relations that I'm not really wanting in the mix. All right, so just dimension. And let's see, our overall was 4. All right, so since I got a jump, I did not infer some relations there. So I could go ahead with the dimensioning, but the sooner I catch up to those relations, probably the better. So again, my two choices are to select and control select the objects, the lines in this case, and I will get a collinear. I could also go with the endpoint and one of the lines, and that would get me a coincident. Both of them will have the same net effect of causing those to share the same line, not move independent of each other. Let's see, what do we have for an overall? Chain dimensions. All right, so 0.53 looks like. All right, so since that was selected, that pretty much is what jumped out. 2 inches, 1.5. 1.5. And then we get into the smart dimension where if I stay close to the line, I get the linear. I drag down, I get the horizontal. I drag over to the side, I get the vertical. And then if we were to pick another object, another line, I would be able to generate the angle. But we're not given an angle, so we'll go with the linear distance. And if I want to check for that angle, we can make the angle a driven dimension just so that we have it for reference. And 1.5. All right, so what am I missing? 1 inch on this side. So let's say that I didn't see that dimension for the 1 inch. Your best diagnostic tool again is going to be grab something that can move and see how it can move. If this was able to really rubber band, that would give me one clue. Since it only moves back and forth, I either need to look for a dimension or a relation to apply to that to the line or to the edge. And then again with the four-headed arrow is asking for an extension. So if I were to pick one of those directions, that would give me an angular dimension. Don't quite want that one, so I'm going to hit escape to clear the point, and then come back to 1 inch. All right, so where that extension line is used, if I pick the point and I pick an angled line, and I say I want to extend, and probably would be better along this edge as an example, but we can apply both of them. That will place in one direction. If I go with that as a direction, then off of the linear, because of that four-headed arrow, because we're staying with the coordinate system, I can pick my angles without generating a construction line, a center line to reference to. All right, so 30.68, 58.15. Those are some interesting angles, but would really need to see what the geometry is doing to make the jump to 60 degrees, 30 degrees. All right, so position on the rectangle, 2.5, 1 inch, 1.23, and 2 inches off of the tip. All right, so that's an interesting number. All right, and again, you don't have to line your dimensions up any certain way. They should be readable. I should be able to pick pretty conveniently that if there is something that I need to get into. But for the most part, wherever you place them, that's going to be fine in the sketch. Detailing is going to occur in the drawing. Okay, and then this one is 5/8, 0.625 on our thickness. We'll save it, pick up the same naming convention. Alright, so this time we'll go with the new drawing. Alright, so just opening up the sheet. Alright, so since this is a default template still, it's still going to ask for the sheet format and size. So one thing to keep in mind is that I can go to custom sheet size, which 279, 287. Well, let's convert that over to inches, 11 by 8.5. And as long as I type in the IN on the end of it, it will be an inch. Except now I have a completely blank and not quite filling up the drawing view. So if I go back to properties, again, if you don't show the properties on your right mouse button context, come down to the customize menu and make sure that properties is selected. Right. I use that one enough. I like to see it there. So what that's going to do is let me back into this sheet properties, and I can double check that, yeah, I did create the 11 by 8.5, and whatever it came back for in the inch to metric translation, the screen hasn't quite caught up yet. So let's see what that does if we go to View Layout, pick a model view, and then that is the currently open drawing. I have the start command when creating new drawing unchecked, so that most of the time we'll be using the view palette. When this does come up, I'd like you to be able to recognize it and know what it's doing. So, or if you prefer this method, then you would go back and check that box so that this opens automatically whenever you create a new drawing. Alright, so advantage here is that I'm going to create multiple views, pick the views that I want. Don't need the trimetric. That was where that came from last time. Set the display style, and we're going to stay with the sheet scale. And go ahead and accept. Alright, so since I'm on the blank drawing, I don't really have anything to reference to, and with a 1/2 scale, that may be why. Now it went out to 16, 29, yeah. All right, so we've got some scaling going on there. So be careful with the sheet scale. I'm going to have to do the conversion for the 215 and the 279, see what it came up as. All right, so we'll come back to that one when I figure out what I actually told it to do there. All right, so we can close those out. All right, going into the next one. Again, if you have the 2010 book, this drawing was for like 223. I copied and pasted this out of the 2014 book so that you'd have reference. So these got kind of mixed up in the text. And if my mouse will cooperate here. So looking at this, could go either way with the rectangle and a couple of notches, staying with the regions. Probably about as fast to go ahead with the sketch. All right, so bottom left corner, and really the point that I wanted to make earlier about the picking a location, whatever looks good. I mean, if you're not locked into having to put every one of these parts on the lower left corner of the part. If you pick or experiment or have a good reason, or even not a good reason to place the origin someplace else. Just experiment with what can work there. Alright, so I'm looking for that inference line. Back to the origin, and then up, over, back, and down, looking for the other inference line. And from last time, I know that I didn't quite get coincident, but that particular inference line put me coincident with the origin. And then that other inference line also coincident to the origin. So now if I try to move this line, it will go back and forth, not up and down. So in that case, I was able to, as I was going through the process, have the software infer as I went, but that's not always going to be the case. So just be prepared to go add relations as you need them, and apparently the origin is still selected, or something's still selected. All right, and our dimensions then: 1/2 inch, 2 inches, and there was an inversion, so let's see what it does when it goes to 3.5. All right, so a little few strange things going on, but not too bad. Overall of 6 inches. So as I'm adding these dimensions and it's doing a few strange things, we're just kind of going through the process and letting it catch up. All right, so both of those were 1.5. So just double clicking on the dimension gets it back. 1.5, and then a depth of 0.75. All right, so there's one that didn't quite make collinear. What do we have? 1.75. And the small dimension, 0.5. And 2.25, well, in here, so go ahead with the 0.75. And then the 2 inches. And 1 inch for the height. Okay, so at this point I think I've put in all of the dimensions, even the ones that got thrown out. And looking at this as a movable item, right? So it moves pretty much the whole thing up and down. So this is another place where I would be looking at collinear. So instead of the endpoint in the line, I'm going to go line to line. And in the pop-up box, we'll go with make collinear. That brings it to fully defined. And our thickness here, not given, so make one up. And we'll save that. Okay, so let's see, we had the two. So I think probably more out of habit, I will end up in the new for the templates. And the drawing will stay with the standard sheet size after last time, and go ahead with it. And then let's see, we did the view layout model view, which is the same as insert drawing view model. Right, so basically the same exact command, just a different way to get to it. And we're going to create the multiple views. Pick the 4. I wonder why the trimetric is staying active on mine there. And go ahead and accept. All right, so even if I don't need all these views, I decide that I can place the dimensions, and I really didn't need the right view. Highlight it so that it's in orange. Hit delete on the keyboard. It'll come up and say, "Are you sure?" And then it goes away. If I decide I need it back, well, at this point I could hit Control Z. If I don't put it in there, then probably the easiest way to create the next one is going to be projected view. So off of that front view, I can do a projected view, and this will set the alignment. All right, so the front view is always the primary or the highest level view. The right view and the top view will follow it. So the top view is able to go up and down, not left and right, so it maintains its alignment. The right view, left to right, but not up and down, so it maintains its alignment. If I created just a new view by selection and did not place it where it was going to be projected or pick up the alignment, I would have to do it manually. I'd have to assign the alignment manually. So let's see, how can I generate one of those? So I pull up the view. Let's grab a left view. So there is the preview that's showing me that it's going to get alignment. I see that dashed line. If I place it anywhere else, not aligned. Okay, so I get it close. And then which one do I want to be the primary view is going to be selected. And the alignment, align horizontal by origin, vertical by origin, horizontal by center, vertical by center, or default. So probably in this case horizontal by origin, pick the view, and then one of these moves. I got it backwards. I made it so that this one is the primary and the others are following it. Okay, so just be careful with the alignment. It's not like it's that big of a deal, but it can have an effect. All right, into the annotations. We talked a little bit about the purple dimensions. So under model items, I have a selected feature. I want the entire model, and a lot of times this comes in as an over, let's say just a big blob of dimensions. So since I have not marked any for drawing, then I don't expect anything to come in. Right, but this is where I would see those. No dimensions are inserted. And if we go back and pick up the model items again, all right, not marked for drawing. Okay, all of the dimensions that I included in that view. All right, so since there was one sketch with all the dimensions, now because it was convenient to draw it that way, does not make it convenient to manufacture. Or if I'm going to, send this out for a quote or whatever the end process is, I don't know that I would use the sketch dimensions. So let's see if I can undo those. There they go. All right, so again, just going back into the smart dimension, placing the dimensions that make sense to me, placing them where I want them, being able to pick outside of the other views, and basically going through the process. All right, so angles working the same way as they do in the sketch, pretty much. All right, so a few dimensions on that one. All right, so I'm going to leave this one open. This is going to, let's see, I'm going to put a couple in here. So 2-3 to 5. All right, so whatever the next couple of items will be, will go into this same mix. All right, so if we go one sheet, one part, one sheet, one part, that is a strategy. The downside is that to print those, I have to either open or select print on each one individually and print, and then print it individually. To make this more like a drawing package. So I have a subassembly, and the subassembly in the drawing package contains all of the parts necessary to build up that subassembly. I would like to have a multi-sheet drawing. So we don't really have a subassembly here, but we'll consider that the next couple of parts are going to be part of the same group. All right. Oh, 2-3 gets a little interesting with the pattern. This is probably a good one to look at for our pattern. Could also do this as a mirror, or could do this as contours and regions. All right, so looking at this this shape, probably will lean towards putting a center line and drawing one quadrant and mirroring, and then mirroring the mirror. Okay, so back into the file, new. Let's go with the rectangle. So because this is going to be center line, this would be a good place to use the center rectangle. So doing the pull down, we've been doing the corner rectangle. The center rectangle has two options now, from the corners or from the midpoints. So since I'm going to mirror across the horizontal and the vertical, I'm going to go from midpoints, and we'll drag out from that center location. So in that one command, I get the items that I really wanted, needed to start the sketch. Oh, and then since I'm not in metric like I said I should be, we're going to go 160 mm since I'm already in the command, and then I'll switch it back to millimeters, grams, and seconds. That kicks me out of the sketch. Go back into the sketch and continue with the dimensions. And our overall is 90. Alright, so we'll zoom up in this quadrant, and we'll go up, over, down, over, up. Let's see, one more, or half of one. Okay, half of one. Up, and I stuttered there. So Control Z. There's one of those really tiny little line segments. All right, so I got a little button happy there for sure. That one needs to go away, or it's going to be one of the items that causes this to not go fully defined. All right, so everything is shown as 20, 7 times 20. And so in this case, I would like to window pick from left to right and get all of those items and make them equal. Interesting result. That wasn't quite what I had in mind. Alright, so we'll back that up just a little bit. Let's see, my first, well, let's go ahead and put the dimension on one of them. 7 times 20. Alright, so 20. And we'll go with the vertical, 20. Set a collinear. Since those didn't play well, we'll go collinear. And then now we'll try to set them all equal. And I got an extension line? No. Okay. Not sure what's keeping that from making the selection. Oh, yeah, okay. So yeah, the end line would be the half line. All right, thank you. All right. Nice. All right, so let's see what kind of paint corners I can paint myself into with this one. All right, so the overall on this was 70. Let's add another dimension. All right, so again with the half dimension and the full dimension, I can come to the opposite side of the center line, and we can go 70. So if we bring this in close enough, oh, okay, so that one went, and we had an overall of 140, and that should be 70 because I picked up the half. All right, so if I still wanted to see that as the full dimension, we can go back to the leaders, and it's going to show as radial and diametral. But pretty much think of it in terms of we're not going to revolve this, so it's really the diametral that I'm interested in. I can force it to think of it in terms of the full dimension. All right, so at this case, it looks like I need 1 or 2. All right, so made a couple of assumptions, got tangled up a couple times, but still work through the process, add a few more dimensions, think about where this is going to end up. All right, so here's a case where I don't really want to select individuals. So I can right-click on one of the objects and anything connected to it by select chain. We'll pick everything in that in those segments, and then we can go mirror entities, and that'll give me the shape. So pretty much at the connection points. Okay, so the little point, those were put in automatically by the mirror. They're not hurting anything. If you don't like them, you can delete them. It's more of a reminder that you mirrored and you mirrored. Okay, so it's not really that big of a deal. Okay, 10 millimeters. And we'll save as to T-4. All right, and then I can switch back to my sheet. And at the bottom left, next to sheet 1, is a button for Add Sheet. All right, that will find the exact same sheet format, or if it can't find the exact same sheet format, for some different reasons, it may not be able to locate it. It will ask you which sheet format you want to use, take you back into the properties. All right, so let's go with the view palette, and we'll pick up. Nope, I didn't want to open that. That one should still be open. 2-4. It updates. You can drag out the front view, and in this case, a right view and the isometric view. Top view is not going to really help anything. So, other than considering the sheet space, maybe the top view would be a little bit better fit, but. Let's see, the other thing that kind of comes up is, what if I wanted to rotate this view? All right, so we drew it in one sketch. It's not exactly, I don't know that this lends itself to being rotated, but with the primary view selected before I apply any dimensions, I can go up to the rotate on the heads-up display and tell it that this is going to rotate 90 degrees and apply it. And it's going to be affected. Yes, we know it's going to stretch. It's going to update and change those other views. If you wanted a weird number, it will do the weird number and figure out the isometric. All right, so 90, and I'm sure that rotate is somewhere else. And if anybody runs across it, please let me know, because I haven't been able to find it. I've always just gone up to the heads up and done the rotate view. All right, so that gives us a little bit different take on it. Put in our dimensions. I want it slipped back to into inches, so we'll save that one. All right, so looking at the window of open items, or the Windows pull down, these will be the open items. I kind of go up there by habit. I don't know that I pointed that out. A couple of versions ago, they made it so that you could open the folder that file is located in, or close it directly out of the list. So I don't need to leave the sheet to close the file. On the other side of that, then, is under our Explorer, recent documents, items that are open. All right, so the current file, the last two are showed grayed out. They're still in memory. They're residing in memory, haven't been fully kicked out, but they're not currently open documents. So that's kind of a useful piece of information if I see that my system's kind of slowing down and I've opened up a lot of things. It may be time to save whatever I'm doing, close SolidWorks, and reopen it. Now with the memory and capabilities of the newer computers, it's not as much of an issue, but you can have enough open documents that it will start to drag down your system. One of the things that you want to watch out for, even when we create the title block, is if I have a 1 meg JPEG in the corner for our company logo, that is 1 meg for this sheet, 1 meg for the next sheet, 1 meg for the next sheet, and you get out 20 sheets and wonder why you have a 20 meg drawing file that should only be about a meg at most. All right, so like I said, it's not as critical, but there are places where it's going to sneak up and can be problematic. All right. 2-5 is in inches, and it comes with the note. Let me switch over here. It comes with the note that results may vary to the rounding error depending on which way you go around the in dimensioning or going around the block. You may get a different result than somebody else would. All right, so looking at the angles, this is pretty much all of the angles that we would want to be able to find. Also need to be aware of the included, the opposite interiors, the opposite exteriors, all of those fun geometry things. What we can get away with here. All right, so front plane, sketch, line. Let's see, A to B is 5 inches, so that's pretty close. And then also watching that as we get more geometry, we're going to get more inferences. And those inferences, if they take over, we'll have to go back and get rid of them. All right, so something like that. Don't think I missed anything too bad. All right, so 5 inches. B to C, and because these are linear dimensions, want to stay close to the line and make sure that it is staying linear, not vertical, not horizontal. All right, 3.8376. All right, and then D to C. So same thing, CD. Come on, get a little close. Nope, maybe. There we go. 1.5403. Now jump over to HA, 3.0881. And then GH, 1.7713. And then G to F, FG, 2.3679. I think it's more of results may vary because entering all those numbers. E to F. 3.4361. Okay, and then they're asking for DE and the angle CDE up here. So, all right, so hopefully the angles will draw that in. All right, so most of these are going to be straight. Pick between the two object lines. Place for the angle. So anything that's not parallel is going to generate an angle. 111.69, 100.1, and then 94.07. Okay, if I can type here, 94.07. .59. .11, and then 68.47. Right, so I get the exterior, but because they're opposites, they should be 68.47. And we can double check that by putting in a couple of construction lines. Okay, it's just so that they're connected. Tell it that it's collinear. Okay, a little close to my extension line. And this will generate that driven dimension showing that we're opposite angles. Okay, so the length that we're interested in is D to E. It's also going to be a driven dimension. So I got 1 point, okay, can't even read my own numbers, 4135. And then the angle, grab the midpoint there, how about that? 61.7. Alright, so in this case, since everything else was set to 4 decimal places, I could do an individual. So pretty much just the answer since we put all of those in. And tolerance precision, well, we're not really setting a plus minus. And it's set for the document. I can override it to go to 4 decimal places just on that one dimension if I need it. If we wanted all of them, that would be a good time to go into the edit document units, find the inches, and take them out as far as you need. And then everything, well, since that's just off my screen, then everything should update to 4 decimal places. So I'm looking down through here and seeing what I typed in and how close I got. We'll kind of go from there. 1.25. All right, so it's not so much that you're worried about what those last 2 numbers are. It's going through the process, setting the angles, picking up those numbers, dealing with the 4 decimal places. And 2.5. All right, so back over to our drawing sheet. Add an additional, add a sheet. Let's see. Well, there's the other add sheet if you don't like the little button. I was going to look and see if it would let me pick there it is. So about 3/4 of the way down, drawing views, model. And then that's going to take me back into the property manager. And I still got the trimetric. So that must have gotten saved with the template. So that drawing view can go away. Not real fond of that scale. So the global scale, let's go to 1/4. Okay, that might have been a little small. All right, and then we can go through and start putting in the dimensions. It's like we did. Yes. Oh, those are let's see if I can find it. That is, one of them is a pop-up, and the other one, let's see if I can find it. All right, so positioning. Actually, I've never paid attention. I've paid that close attention to them. So let's double check. I think it's you're picking the dimension if you're not placing. It's showing you which side of the line it's going to place it on. So even though there's some distance between the extension line and the object, it's still giving you a reference. So after that initial, now I've lost it. I'm not getting it back apparently. So one side, the other side, and then once it's placed, hovering over, that will be kind of the same properties as what's going on over here in the list of in the property manager. So a quicker way to get to parentheses around putting in text and having it show up. All right. So again, I have a lot of habits. I have a lot of years to develop a lot of habits. So some of the things are just quicker because that's the way that I've always done it. All right. So at this point, I have the drawing sheet. Now, when I want to print, I can come up to my my print settings, just the current sheet, all sheets, or individual sheets, as opposed to opening each one or right-clicking on it and saying print. Have SolidWorks launch the model, do whatever it needs to do to calculate the print, and then send it to the printer. All right, so 2.6 we'll finish up with is pretty much the same with the angles and the dimensions. Again, some of the opposite angles, and unfortunately, there's not too many here that lend themselves to the little four-headed arrow. But well, let's just let's see what we get. All right, and after doing that, then these were in metric. All right, so we'll just go back to millimeters, grams, and seconds. It'll kick me out. Sketch. All right, so up, over. See if I can get some good inferences going on. So there was a parallel. That one kind of comes back and goes out, and then over and back. All right, so since I wasn't watching my inferences, there's no horizontal showing up in the existing relations, no little green box underneath the line to tell me that it's horizontal. So I'm going to apply that relation myself. All right, so now I have the little green box. When I hover over it, it turns orange. When I select it, it turns blue. And then from the property manager, existing relations horizontal. Didn't know that would cause it to go to magenta. So all kinds of fun colors going on with just in those little relations. All right, so 130. And B to C is 28.1. C to D 40.6. And it is kind of interesting that that split circle is not showing up with the sketching. It's kind of relying on you to place the dimension, or it doesn't see it as critical. 111, 133.9, and that was a miss. All right, so line has a little bit of an angle to it, and actually has a little bit of up angle to it, but the dimension itself is linear or horizontal. Oops, didn't want to. Control Z again. Cutting it didn't really help. All right, so linear dimension 133.9. Let's see, FG is the question mark. GH goes to 114. And then HJ 70.6, and JA 56.7. So I'm going to zoom up on that one using the middle scroll wheel just to make sure that I'm placing it a little better. 6.7. All right. So nothing got, okay, got a little crazy. All right, so if you pick the endpoint again and the angle, that's what's going to give you the arrows. The arrow coming out at 0 degrees is going to be the same as picking the line. I guess the reference or the reason that we would want that extension is if we didn't have anything perpendicular or located conveniently to that to the origin or in reference to that geometry. So it creates an extension line in a direction that hopefully will help us out. All right, so we don't necessarily need it on every 0.88 on every angle that we put in, but based on how this is moving, I know that I generated some of those relations. So, all right, so that one's not going to give me the outside angle, so we're going to go to the opposite, 0.58. And then since this is fully defined, or I'm seeing all of the objects, endpoints, lines, endpoint in black, I know that this has some relation to it that is going to override the 100.81. So we'll just double check it. And for my dimension, again with the don't show, it went right to driven. All right, so there's a parallel that I didn't expect. Well, I kind of saw it. Highlight, showed up when it shows up in blue, and then the choice is to delete and reapply, or just select and come over to other and send it back to being the driving dimension. All right, 64.2. And okay, that one's just a little weird. A little lost maybe. See if we can kind of drag that one back around. No. All right, so had the endpoint selected. Oh, got out of my dimension by hitting escape. Five. Well, I guess we're gonna have to get the rest of these in here and see what they look like. 85.38. And over defining geometry. So either once again, all right, and at that point I'm not getting, well, at least it's not showing me. So let's bypass and we will go look for angles, no relation, and an angle. 114. All right, so that one, nope, 99.55. See if we'll take that one, 48.95. All right, so it really doesn't like one of the dimensions that I gave it. All right, 133. All right, so DE 111. Okay, that looks a little better. So either when I was messing around with the driven dimension or placing those, I missed one. All right, so we're interested in F to G, and we'll find a place for it here. Okay, so again, I have it set to go automatically into a driven dimension. And then the angle EFG at 60.73 and 27.03. And then thickness is 12. All right, so if you can work through the objects that want to invert, the dimensions, the too many relations, not enough relations, that's kind of the purpose as far as I'm concerned, getting you into that mindset of nothing that this throws up at you in the way of over-defining, cannot resolve, are super critical. You're going to have to work back through the process to figure out what caused it, but it's all solvable, it's all doable.